There it is.
Okay,
All right.
top 13.
All right, now we get into the nitty gritty.
All right. Number 13 for me was Spider-Man: Far From Home. Oh, which I really love this film. What it does to Mysterio. 'Cause I don't know, something about Mysterio. I really always liked Mysterio as a villain. I think the whole like magic aspect is like, oh, that's really interesting, right? And it's like all illusions and stuff, and the way that they updated it to fit, 2009, was it 2019? 2019.
Yeah.
With the drones and everything, like that to me made a lot of sense. Whether that or not the science is correct, like it made sense to me. And I really love the whole sequence where Mysterio really puts Peter Parker in this whole like illusionary sequence. Like that was awesome just to see that like on the big screen. But I don't know. I feel like you kind of forget what the movie is just because of that whole last end credit sequence, right? Like that's the biggest shock of the movie was the end credit sequence, and it's technically not even part of the movie.
But usually the end credits, for the most part, in the history of MCU, aren't really part of the film.
Right, and that's why, and people forget about the rest of the movie because like that's all they can talk about. It's like, oh my gosh, what are they gonna do with like Peter Parker in the future now that he's out? No one really talks about the actual film itself.
Who are you hanging out with? Anyways.
6-year-olds? No,
yeah,
just kidding.
Don't make
my cousin's kids.
All right, that feels better when you just say 6-year-olds. Who are you hanging out with? 6-year-olds. Yeah. My number 13, and I apologize because I know this is probably going to hurt you, is Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Oh.
I like the film, and I think the Wasp in that movie in particular, it is a more interesting character to me than compared to Captain Marvel.
Oh, but, so much more fleshed out as a character. Like she has layers.
Yeah,
layers.
For sure. And like the whole gimmick of like him being under house arrest, but it's like a heist movie. But at the same time, like the villain kind of feels forgettable. She's forgotten, and I feel like she has a really good backstory. What's her name? Phantom, right? Is the name of another thing. And she has like that story, and that character is so cool. And we never really get to go into the mythos of it too much. You know what I mean? It's specifically about, as it should be, I guess, but it's more about the heist and then them trying to get the mom back. And I like the whole thing with like the quantum realm and all that stuff. But
yeah, I would argue that there is no villain in this film.
That's kind of true too, if you really.
Yeah, there really is no villain
except for the dealer they deal with. What's his face?
Oh, the forgettable guy.
There's technically villains in it. Technically,
but I mean, in terms of like the main plot of the story, yeah, there's no actual villain. Even Phantom, like she just wants to live, you know.
Yeah. So, and it's a good film. I like it, but it cracked my top 13. So, no, you can't be that mad at me. But it's squarely at 13.
Okay, that's fair.
You can be mad at me, but
yeah, you allow me to be whatever I want to be.
All right, emotionally, you're right. I can't tell you where to be emotionally. Your feelings are valid.
Thank you. Okay, number 12 for me, Black Panther.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like some of the graphics are kind of wonky. It does feel a little bit cartoonish in some ways, but to me, the real issue I have with this movie, right? It's called Black Panther, but Black Panther doesn't do shit in this movie. He has no agency, really, right? He's he's king, but he doesn't want to be king, right? And then he gets dethroned from this statue that he didn't want in the first place. And then he is told that he has to fight to get it back. And this whole time he's like, no, but I don't know, my father, all this stuff. And like the only people who are actually doing things like are like Shuri does a lot. She kind of drives things forward in terms of her technology and what she kind of issues to Black Panther. Like he doesn't even make his own suit. All right, obviously he's smart enough because he understands what's going on, but Shuri makes it for him, right? Um, shoot, what's his girlfriend's name?
I know it's Lupita Nyong'o. I forgot her
Yeah,
character's name.
but I
That's
mean, I feel like she has a lot more agency than Black Panther does. And Okoye is pretty badass. Like she does a lot too.
Koya is really badass.
Yeah.
She's fucking dope. I do not agree with your assessment on Black Panther, but it's not my film yet, so I won't talk about it just yet.
Even Killmonger. To me, like Killmonger is a real I don't want to say hero, but like he should have been the main focus. Like it should have been called a Killmonger movie, and I would have watched that 1,000 times more than I would have watched Black Panther.
I think now people are mad at you.
I think so too.
I'll get to Black Panther when I get to it in my list, which is gonna be
okay. Okay.
My number 12 is Ant-Man.
Number 1.
Number 12 is Ant-Man for me.
All right.
Because I like it. I like the surprise shocker of it's Paul Rudd, and he legitimately prepared for the film. I like how hilarious it is. I like his little squad. I like how he's like a criminal who's trying to redeem himself. I like the angle of it. I like the little girl. I like the film. It's good. To me, it's not the best or the greatest MCU film, but it's good. And it's up to this point. It stands out a little bit more compared to everything else that's kind of around it in a sense. So I would put it squarely at 12, and I feel right. I feel good about that. Yeah, not much else to say.
I don't agree, but that's your list.
I mean, your opinion is null and void from where you put Black Panther. So, but for the sake of the show, keep going with your arbitrary list.
All right, yeah, Ant-Man for me is much higher. Number 11 is Avengers Endgame.
Ooh, that's a shocker.
I know. It was kind of a shock to me too. Initially, when I first went through my list, Avengers Endgame was at number 18.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that sounds wrong. That looks wrong. Just looking at the list, like that just doesn't feel right.
Mm-hmm. And
so I had to I forced it higher, but the highest I can put it is number 11.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. It's really good. It's such a wonderful cap on what the Infinity Saga is. I don't know if it's a good film if you don't have all the history behind it, right? Like if you're not invested in most of these movies, if not all, right? I don't think you need to be invested in all the movies. But a majority of it, if you're not invested in it, I don't think Endgame plays the same way it does for someone who's never seen anything before. And for that, like I can't put it any higher because like as a film on its own, I don't think that the stakes are there without the history.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Black Panther and Endgame are so low for you.
Not even top 10.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know who you are. My number 11 is Captain America: The First Avenger. I liked it. I saw it like 3 times in the theaters. I love how Cap is who he is. Steve Rogers is Steve Rogers, whether you like it or not, whether you buy into it or not. That's just the person he is. He's always has been. I like how they show why they chose him for the serum. Uh I like Red Skull in it. I like the setup for the next film with Bucky, and I like the setup with Peggy in it. I like the action. I like that it's a war film. You know, it's not so much a superhero film because even though he becomes kind of quote unquote superhuman, and he,
Mhm.
he even says like he can't get drunk no matter how much alcohol he drinks because of the metabolism caused by the super serum. So I like that it's like a superhero movie, but it doesn't feel like a superhero movie because he's just a dude doing the right thing, but he just happens to have these abilities that help him do it consistently and do it well. You know what I mean? So I
Whoa.
like that. I like that film a lot. So
Hey,
number 11, Captain America: The First Avenger.
now I feel bad putting it so low.
No, you don't. Put it at 10. What's your number 10?
I'm gonna have to switch it out with Black Panther. I think you've convinced me. All right, number 10 is Infinity War.
Mm,
Ah, man, I also don't feel good about putting it at number 10. Um, it is essentially a Thanos movie, right?
mhm.
Like it's his story that you're really following. He wins at the end. He's technically the protagonist, um, and they do a really good job of setting it up. You kind of understand where he's coming from. You somewhat empathize with him. At least I do. Right? I can like really like understand who, like, what makes him what he is.
Mhm.
And the setup is, I think it really pays off towards the end. That's why I don't like Endgame as much because they kind of just take all that away.
Hmm. Man, I have thoughts, but I'm not there yet. My number 10 is Doctor Strange. Mostly because this movie is very strange in a unique way with magic and all that stuff being thrown into it. The idea, because a lot of people have the complaint, and you can kind of sort of, depending on who you are, it's like, oh, he's just essentially Tony Stark, which is like yes and no. Like he
Mm,
has like the same essence of Tony Stark, and that he's a self-made type of man, right? Tony Stark was like a mad genius, and uh, Doctor Strange is like the best surgeon, right? And they're both kind of self-made individuals, but it comes from like a place of ego and pride more than selflessness. And
mhm.
once this one thing is taken away from them, that's when they discover who they can really be in terms of helping to serve others, not helping to serve themselves. So in that sense, I get why a lot of people say like Tony Stark and Doctor Strange are kind of echoing each other. But I really like the magical realism in it. I like the world they set up. It's like this new fresh thing in Marvel. It's like, all right, we've just been dealing up to this point. It's just been like science, right?
Mhm.
Even Thor, and like I think in Thor Dark World, he describes like in your world it's called magic, but for us it's just science. So everything kind of relates to science up until this point. And Doctor Strange's first one's like, no, it's magic. It's straight up magic. It's your inner energy. It's these weird spiritual uh traditions and rituals. It's just magic. Now it for that. And I thought it was very unique and cool. And I love the fact that there's no, again, this is another movie where there's no real villain per se in it. There's a threat,
Mm.
but not really a villain. I know Max what's his last name? Mickelson, I think is his last name.
Mads
He's
Mikkelsen, yeah.
Yeah, he's technically the villain in it. And he's pretty good for what he is. He's a menacing actor. He's always like he's in Casino Royale as a bad guy. He's Hannibal Lecter in the series, right? But it's really more about Doctor Strange discovering self. And and I love how the way he defeats Dormammu at the end isn't by literally defeating him. It's just outsmarting him
Mhm.
to submission, which I think is great. He doesn't destroy or defeat Dormammu. It's just like, we're gonna keep doing this thing forever, dude. And it's like, you're torturing me. What do you want? And I just thought that was
Yeah.
so clever the way they ended it that way. So yeah, at number 10, Doctor Strange for me.
Yeah, I love Doctor Strange's character arc in this film.
Hmm.
It's, yeah, because at the beginning of the film, he is a douchebag. Like you kind of don't like
Oh,
him.
he's the biggest
Huge,
dick.
yeah. And you kind of get to see him, yeah, fall from grace and then build himself back up, and that's really intriguing to see on film.
Hmm.
Yeah, I just don't like the whole American accent. Like, you get Benedict Cumberbatch, let him be British. Like, to me, Doctor Strange, to me, Doctor Strange always had like that accent. Right, whenever I would read comics, he was never American to me. He was just imported from Britain to New York.
But that's the thing, though, right? In the comics, he is American.
Whatever.
But I get where you're coming from. But all right, what's your number 9?
Captain America: Winter Soldier.
Mm.
Really great action. Oh my god! Like, everything in this film was really, really good. The whole scene where Steve Rogers is holding the helicopter down, like, how memorable is it? You don't forget that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's the first time you realize, oh man, like it looks like Chris Evans is actually doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because in some sense he kind of was, right? The way they shot it is like they did have like the helicopter arm that he was legitimately holding on to. But yeah. My number 9 is Captain America with Civil War.
Oh, so low. Okay.
And this is the movie when we were talking, I was saying like this film is getting lower and lower. It was originally at number 3, and I just kept finding myself pushing it lower. I like the film, and you and I have had many discussion on why I love it.
Yeah.
And I still love it. I've watched it a lot. It's just the other films that I have above this, I feel are just slightly more unique. Because I think the thing that ultimately kind of puts it low for me is it's called Captain America first and then Civil War. But it's really like Avengers 2.5, honestly. Right?
Yeah.
Because there's a storyline of like Captain America trying to save Bucky, but then we're introduced to Black Panther and he's trying to get revenge on Bucky for killing his dad. Where we have Tony Stark kind of coming in, trying to compromise the superheroes and trying to get the Accords, and then you have like everybody from the Avengers kind of taking both sides. And up to this point, to me personally, right, I didn't feel like we had enough Avengers. Like, we didn't have enough time with the Avengers to kind of warrant the sudden split from it. You know what I mean? Like, personally speaking, I would have loved more of time with the Avengers as a unit before we were like, all right, now let's break them up. Because up to that point, we've had 2 films. And then that's it. And then Civil War, and then it's over. You know what I mean? They break up, which I understand why. I'm not saying it didn't serve its purpose. It's just, to me personally, I would have loved more time as the Avengers being a team. Because in the first movie, they're not really a team until the very, very end. And in the second movie, they are a team, but it's like the movie's like whatever in terms of Age of Ultron. So yeah. So
I will say though, in Age of Ultron, my favorite scene is like the after party where they're all just kind of hanging out and like drinking and like trying to lift Thor's hammer.
Yeah, I wanted a little bit more of that, just a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from because I just love seeing them all kind of hanging out, being themselves.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of like juggling all those pieces, I think the film does it really well. I love how they introduce Black Panther in it, and this is where I think your gripe with Black Panther for me is unwarranted, because in Civil War, it's where he's kind of struggling with being a king, because it's like he just lost his dad. He's just used to being a prince at this point, right? He's just kind of the Black Panther, but his dad is also the Black Panther still. He's still king of Wakanda. Whereas I feel like for me in Black Panther, he kind of accepts the role, but he doesn't understand the weight of the role yet. You know what I mean? Like he kind of has to go through his own little journey to understand what it means to be the king of Wakanda in Black Panther. For me personally, the way I see the film. But anyways, this is Civil War. I like the action. I like the team split up. I think it makes sense how they reverse the roles of Iron Man and Captain America compared to in the comic books. I love Bucky in this, especially because Bucky becomes his own individual at this point. I love Falcon in it. I love Tony Stark in it. I love everything about it. It's not, to me, it's not quite as unique, and it does leave me wanting a little bit more. That's probably why ultimately I had to rank it at number 9 for me, even though it legit did kind of hurt.
Yeah, you didn't even mention Spider-Man.
Yeah, he's introed in this. That's right. And that's how packed the movie is with things in it that Spider-Man kind of slipped my mind, but he's in this. Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, it's much higher for me. I understand sort of where you're coming from. All right, number 8 for me, Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Of course, yeah. You would have it higher.
Yes, I just one. I'm a huge mark for Paul Rudd. I love everything he does. And he's ageless. Like, how can you not look at Paul Rudd and like not be jealous, right?
He's never aged. That's very true.
Yeah. No, but the film, I mean, technically it should be called The Wasp and Ant-Man, but it does a lot for me. It's one of the most lighthearted movies. It comes right after Infinity War, right, which is really heavy as a film towards the end. And to have Ant-Man and the Wasp come right after, you're like, oh yeah, like MCU can be fun. And it's what I like about both of the Ant-Man films is they really understand the emotional core, right, of who Scott Lang is.
Mm-hmm.
And Ant-Man and the Wasp kind of like it takes that core of like Scott Lang just wants to be a family man, and then extends it out to the rest, right, to the Wasp and with her mother and things like that. And there are some issues with this film, like you said, like there's no real villain. But for me, it's great. It's just it's fun. It's rewatchable. I can watch this over and over again.
Well, all right. I
Yeah.
mean, it's your list.
It's my list.
It's your list. I hope you're proud of. I hope you're proud of what you've accomplished so far.
All right, you're number 8.
My number 8, and I will gladly admit I have it's emotional bias for sure, is Spider-Man Far From Home for me. I love this film a lot. For me, what initially got me into comic books are two specific comic books. It was an issue.
Me and sorry.
No, when I was a kid, I
Oh,
used to
okay.
be really into comic books, and then eventually, like, I kind of wanted to get back into it, and you helped me get back into it for sure. I'm not denying that. But when I was a kid, I had an issue of Batman where Gotham City was in an earthquake. I remember the cover. It's like Batman holding a teddy bear, and he's very sad. I'm like, I love it. That's one of the first comic books I ever owned. And the second issue I've ever owned is a Spider-Man issue with Mysterio on it. And I distinctly always remember Mysterio always being my favorite Spider-Man villain in terms of his rogue gallery. So the way Jake Gyllenhaal, and I love Jake Gyllenhaal so much, I think he's a great actor, and the way he portrays Mysterio in this film, I think, is pitch perfect. I love the way to describe his illusions, and for me too, this Spider-Man film feels a little bit more like a Spider-Man film for me, in the sense that, like, yeah, he's not in New York, right? But it's the essence of who Peter Parker is like, he does what he has to do regardless of the self-sacrifice he makes, right? Like the whole time, like, yeah, in the beginning he's going there, he just wants to be a kid, right? But he realizes, like, I'm Spider-Man, I have to do something, especially with like coming out of like Endgame, and Tony Stark's gone, like the world's looking for that next great superhero. And at first Peter Parker being a kid, right? And that's the thing too, he's a teenage boy. He feels of that of what people, of that expectation from himself, from like what he feels Tony Stark, by Tony Stark giving him Eve, from Nick Fury. He feels that way. He's like, I'm just a kid who just happened to run into this, right? But then, like, they put Peter through the ringer, dude. Like, Mysterio beats the crap out of him. He gets run over by a freaking train, and to the point where he has trust issues when he calls Happy, and they're in the middle of that field, and he's like, how do I know it's you? You gotta tell me something, right? And that poignancy. And then for me, what really does it is that scene in the plane where he's like, I can't be Tony Stark, and then Happy tells him, like, nobody is. You just got to be you. And then he has that poignancy where he's like, you're right, I'm Spider-Man. He's like, I'm Peter Parker. And then again, they introduce the essence of what Peter Parker is too, right? He's a superhero, but he's also a mad genius. Like, he's a scientific smart guy. Like, he made his own webbing. He made his own costume initially, right? So then he builds his new costume, and Happy, and like the joke of like, he's a young kid, he doesn't know the difference between Led Zeppelin and AC/DC. And I don't know, man. And then the love triangle between him and MJ, like him being a kid, not knowing how to handle technology, him trusting too quickly with Mysterio, to not trusting Happy when he first sees him, to realizing like he has to trust his instincts sometimes, even if they're wrong. You know what I mean? And just
Yeah.
the fact that he fights this army of droids to save a city and to save his friends and to stop a bad guy from being a bad guy. And we have an actual really good villain in the film. I think Mysterio and Jake Gyllenhaal is great. And there's no way he doesn't come back in a future film. Because if you, specifically at the end of that film, when he asks, "Am I seeing what I'm seeing?" and she says, "All illusions are gone." It just says, "All illusions are gone," but she never says, "Yes, he is dead." You know what I mean? It just says, "All
Right.
illusions are gone." So that can kind of set up that, like, oh, you thought he was dead, but he really wasn't. You just thought that, but he was there on the floor. You know what I mean? So
Right. Yeah,
I
what I
love
love about Jake Gyllenhaal's performance is like for that first like beginning part where he's kind of like
a
being
good
super,
dude.
he's being super cheesy and like
Yeah.
just I'm like, what is going on? Why is Jake Gyllenhaal like
Yes, it's so good.
he's a really good actor. Why is he being so bad? Right? And then the whole like the switch happens and I'm like, oh, like, it was
It's so
deliberate.
good.
It's
And it's
super,
and,
yeah.
and also too, here's the thing. This is the thing I want to point out. Comic book fans obviously know that turn is coming, right? They're like, we
Yeah.
know it's coming. It's so predictable. That's because as a comic books fan, I showed this to my family, my sisters, my dad. None of them saw that twist coming. Absolutely none of them. They all legitimately thought Mysterio was a good dude. And when that twist comes, I literally saw my family's jaws drop. They're like, what? The whole time he was just kidding? And I'm like, I know it's good, right? As a comic book fan, because you're a comic book fan, you have that history. But for the regular person who hasn't read the comic books, didn't watch the animated series, like for them, it's a genuinely good like twist that they don't see it coming, but then it makes sense. And they're like, we get it. Like, oh my gosh, it makes sense. But they never see it coming. That's another thing too. Sometimes we gotta take off our our little like knowledge caps and our comic book like, oh, I read the original, you know what I mean?
Right.
And just take it for what it is. And like the twist is very good, despite it. Yeah, I knew it was coming, but even me watching the film, I had that little bit of doubt, like, oh, what if Marvel is really trying to like swerve me and this is legit a dude from an alternate dimension and eventually actual Mysterio from our, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
even it got me even a little bit at the end, which I love about a film where it kind of makes me lower my defenses a little bit. So yeah, and I the effects in it are great. I love I love the acting in it. I love the characters, Nick Fury, all of it. So yeah, for me, yeah, I know it's probably a lot higher than most people, but I really loved Far From Home for me personally.
Yeah. Hearing you talk about it, like it reminds me of like how much I really like this film. I haven't seen it since I saw it the one time in theaters.
Oh, you got to revisit it. That's the
Yeah,
thing.
that's I think that's why it's so low for me, just because I haven't seen it again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but hearing you talk about it, I'm like, oh yeah, no, this actually is a really good film, and I feel like if I revisit this list after watching it, it probably would rank higher for me.
Yeah, and it's also too
Um,
like I just talked about all the superhero aspects of it, but like I love his like fellow classmates and like their characters and like the little romance that
mhm.
Ned has with like the girl, and then like it's yeah, it's good. I like it, but that's my number 8.
Mm. Uh, all right. I guess to kind of piggyback on that, my number 7 is Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Mm.
Uh, man, yeah, like Spider-Man to me is one of my favorites, right? um, Obviously, my favorite from Marvel is Daredevil. He's my favorite Marvel character, but close second is probably Spider-Man. Uh, I think a lot has to do with the fact that we kind of grew up watching that '90s cartoon, right, of Spider-Man.
Mm.
Uh, but also, like, I would go to the supermarket with my mom, and they always have those magazines and stuff like right by the checkout, and I would always pick up like a Spider-Man comic book. And so, to me, seeing Spider-Man: Homecoming and seeing like Peter Parker done, like, Peter Parker as a teenage boy done right,
Mm-hmm.
like that really resonated with me. Like, okay, like I legit believed he was uh, this teenage boy, and then having how am I going to say this? But just having Peter Parker kind of go through this whole like I don't really have a father. Uncle Ben died. Like Tony Stark is like that, kind of pseudo father figure, and for him to like always constantly be like, I need this approval from Tony Stark throughout the whole film. At least for me personally, that really emotionally resonated. Right? Like that's what like a teenage boy is. Like he's looking for guidance, and I think this film really captures that really well. And then the whole sequence in the car, right,
With
with
Vulture.
Vulture, yeah. Oh, like that's how you build tension in a film. Like that is legit, like film 101 stuff. Where
Mhm.
yeah, if you want to study film, study that scene. Understand like there is so much that goes into the subtext of the dialogue. Like they're just talking about like, hey, like, this is my daughter, this is dance, whatever, all this stuff. But like underneath, you know exactly what's going on, and that tension is real. Like, oh my god,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a good scene. But again, like I know I ranked it low, so I get why you were upset with me because you ranked it so much higher than me.
yeah.
And I love that scene too, but just the rest of the film, for me personally, it just doesn't resonate with me as much, I guess.
No,
So
even Vulture as a villain, because Vulture as a villain, you understand exactly why he's doing what he's doing,
yeah, he's doing it
and
for his
it's
family. He feels like he has no other choice.
and it's the opposite sides of Tony Stark. Like one person reveres Tony Stark, and the other side absolutely despises Tony Stark,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so like that itself is like it's tension building together towards one single point, and
Mm-hmm.
when they collide, it's like I don't know, it's you get an understanding of what the MCU is.
Mm-hmm. Okay. My number 7 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And I love this film for the emotional resonance in it. I love it's called Guardians of the Galaxy, but it should really be called Star-Lord.
Mm-hmm.
It's really his story. It's what he's going through personally. Who discovers his dad, the self-discovery of who he is, of why he is, like what is he made up of, the realization that your biological father doesn't make him a father. It's the person who raises you, who takes care of you, whether they were wrong or were right, the good or the bad. It's that person that kind of helped you to find who you are, who's your father figure. And that's what he goes through with oh god, I'm forgetting his name. The beer finally hit. uh what is the blue man's name? I feel so dumb. I'm
Yondu.
married. Yeah, Yondu. God damn it. Yeah, I was right. I was gonna say Indu.
Hmm.
Which was close.
Close.
It's the peer, man. But yeah, but Yondu and like, and even he's just like, he may have been your father, boy, but he wasn't your daddy. And it's like that
Which,
realization.
yeah, I mean, when you take it out of context, it sounds like an insult. But
But in the context of that film, it is a
yeah,
joke, but it's also a very poignant line. You know what
yeah,
I
no,
mean?
it really hits like right here. It's like
Yeah.
you feel it.
And
Yeah.
it's a realization too, like yeah, this guy's kind of an idiot. He kind of messed up a lot, but he tried. Like he
Hmm.
didn't get rid of me. He didn't push me to the side. Like he legit tried. He did, and then you discover like he was supposed to give him up to basically be killed, right? To be get rid of. But he was like, no, I'm gonna raise him and take care of him as best as I could, not knowing like him being a scoundrel. He was literally a pirate. But
Hmm.
even then, he was like, I can't kill this kid. Like someone, I'm gonna try. And that's what most good parents do, right? Most good parents know like I can't really raise a kid. Like no one really knows what's the perfect formula, right? But they're gonna try their best. And that's what
Hmm.
Yondu did, and that's when he discovers like, oh yeah. And then it's just kind of scary realizing that your father is essentially this god figure, and he's like the most evil god ever. It's like holy crap, my father's insane. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That and the way they fight him is so unique. The whole celestial being thing,
Hmm.
and then discovery of like how he put cancer in his mom, which is so vile.
Oh.
But then you have those little like angles and those little moments with like baby Groot and Rocket, and then Gamora kind of like still discovering like whether she really legitimately loves Star Lord or her feelings for him. Um, Drax kind of like rediscovering kind of like his fatherhood like aspect with I forget her name too. The little late
Mantis.
Mantis. Yeah. Mantis. Kind of rediscovering her as like a daughter and like trying to take care of her and stuff like that, and being like, oh, okay. And also, you still get like the emotional pain of like he still feels like his because the loss of his family and stuff, and then Gamora with her sister with Nebula, and then it's that movie's literally about family and like, yeah, family's dysfunctional, but it doesn't mean that you still can't function. If that makes sense, like
Hmm.
I don't know. And the jokes hit. Some I've heard the complaint. Some people find it too jokey. For me, I didn't find it too jokey. I think the jokes hit, personally speaking, and the action's really good. And the CGI is fun, but it's not relying on that. Like the emotional impact of the movie is what makes the film. It emotionally speaking, it does that right. Whereas normally with like most MCU films or even comic book films, the crescendo of the film is like the third act is just explosions and this big CGI fest, which Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 does. It does have a big CGI fest because it's a celestial being, right? With ego. But it resonates emotionally because it has emotional stakes in it now. With like
Hmm.
Yondu being there and like Star Lord being threatened by his biological father and like the end of the world and blah, blah. I just yeah. I like it a lot more than the first Guardians for sure. Enough to put it at number 7.
Okay. Number 6 for me is Iron Man. The first one.
Ooh.
The one that started it all, technically. Even though. Wait. No, Iron Man came out before the Hulk. Yeah, this is the one that started it all.
Iron Man was number 1. They were originally making the movie just as a standalone, and they kind of started to realize like we can kind of set up stuff throughout.
Yeah.
I think that's the story. Like throughout production, they were like, "Oh, we're actually going to build this world out now." But initially, it was going to be
Yeah.
just its own standalone film.
Yeah. And it, as a standalone film, it's awesome. It's really good. It's almost perfect.
Yep.
Right? The kid, yeah. Um, almost nothing is wasted in that film. Everything you get is like essential to
Mm-hmm.
understanding who Tony Stark is. And
Mm-hmm.
that whole character arc of like being a weapons arms dealer in the beginning to finally like stating out loud, "I am Iron Man," and kind of like accepting that whole responsibility that comes with it. Right, all that builds to that one moment, and it's a really great film. Um, and to think that that's the one that started it all
Mm-hmm.
is crazy because
Mm-hmm.
it's just so good, and like almost nothing can kind of touch it in terms of like how perfect it is. That being said, it's number 6 just because, personally speaking, it just doesn't resonate emotionally as much as the rest of my list does.
That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
All right, my number 6 is Thor Ragnarok.
Okay.
Personally, because you take the first Thor, which had this unique take on Thor, right? It was a reimagining of Thor from the comic books and the unique aspect of the hero's journey. And then Dark World was just kind of like run of the mill movie, slightly forgettable. And I don't think anyone would argue it, right? And you get Taika Waititi who comes in and he has to reimagine Thor to kind of keep Thor going. And not only reimagine Thor, but kind of have these other bits and pieces to kind of set up Infinity War. Because it's pretty much Thor Ragnarok and then it's Avengers Infinity War, I believe, right? Correct me
Right.
if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure I'm yeah, it was Thor Ragnarok, it was Black Panther, and then it was like Infinity War. But Thor Ragnarok,
Uh,
that end credit scene kind of
the
ties
Spider,
into
yeah, Thor Ragnarok, Spider Man. No, I got that wrong. Yeah, Thor, Black Panther, and Infinity War.
yeah. So it kind of has to set up the big final spectacle that is Infinity War. Um, but it's really funny in a unique and different way. It's crazy bonkers. I love the whole sci-fi aspect of it, where now it really does feel like the whole science aspect that Thor kind of mentioned in like Dark World and the first movie. It doesn't feel magical. It feels like this like there's this other universe outside of like Earth and the Earth heroes. You know what I mean? There's like this whole
Mm-hmm.
other. It really, to me, that film. I know Guardians technically introduces the whole like galaxy of Marvel, but to me, Thor really gives us an intimate look of that galaxy, if that makes sense. To me
Mm-hmm.
personally, And I love the reimagining of Thor in that movie. I love how funny it is. I love how he's able to reconcile with Loki, and it really cements the 180 of like Loki is the bad guy in Avengers. Now he's kind of like this lovable bad guy who just can't help himself sometimes, but he's like a good dude. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I love the introduction of Valkyrie. She's such a badass too. She has a good poignant back history that we kind of get into a little bit, and I hope we get more details of that back history with Valkyrie. I love that they finally gave us Talking Hulk, because I've been wanting Talking Hulk for the longest time,
Yeah.
and I love that they gave us that Hulk, because like for me, some like my favorite Marvel heroes for me personally, it was Hulk, uh, and Deadpool are like my two top. They always interchange sometimes, but they're like my favorite comic books and my favorite Marvel uh characters, because Hulk has like that Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of
Mm.
duality thing going on with him. And I'm always bummed that MCU just can't figure out Hulk and give him like a proper good movie. So for me to feel like they finally kind of did justice like the comic book Hulk that I kind of know a little bit in it, I was like, oh, that's cool. I like that they're making Hulk intelligent. He can actually have conversations. He's no longer Banner's rage. He's literally his own character now.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? He's like that other personality of Banner, which I really liked in the film too. And it's just fun. Jeff Goldblum in it is hilarious. The music
Yes.
is like this weird, like 80s retro kind of synthy music, which I really
I
love in it too.
love that.
I love that like this is a theme I'm seeing with myself. Like the MCU movies that I really love don't really have like that clear cut bad guy in it. There's not really there's not really a bad guy in Thor Ragnarok, right? Technically there is, right? Because Kate Blanchett's
Hella.
Hela, she's great too. Oh my god.
Oh, you can tell she's
She,
having so much fun with
she's
that
having
character.
she's having so much fun. She's chewing the scenery in the best way possible.
Hmm.
And to me personally, Kate Blanchett is a beautiful woman, but she's never looked sexier as
Mm.
compared to in this film. And it's just because she's enjoying herself, like she's having a blast. And that to me just like ah that movie, that's fun
Yeah.
too. So there's like that villain and that threat, right? But it's like
Technically, she doesn't really interact with Thor all that
nah.
much.
She has that one
Yeah.
interaction in the beginning when their dad passes away, opening the portal for her to come out, and
Mhm.
then at the end where he kind of like has to like save his people, and that's the other thing too that I love about it, where like Ragnarok has to happen, right? The destruction of Asgard, but it's not the destruction of his people. But I thought was like a really good, like poignant, like
Mhm.
Asgard's not a place, it's its people, and I was like, that's a good little like, just like,
Yeah.
so good. And then god, just everything about it, I really love it. The way they outsmart her too, because they don't technically beat her, they just kind of
Yeah.
outsmart her, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna release Ragnarok, okay. Like they actually
Yeah.
fulfill the prophecy to kind of stop her from controlling Asgard. And that's
Mhm.
again, and she's such a good villain, but we only get like a little taste of it. So I'm hoping the way they set it up is you never actually see her get defeated either. So I
Right.
think that maybe she could also come back eventually down the line. I'm hoping she does. I thought she was great in it. But yeah, man, I don't know. I really love this film. I saw it like 5 times. I just thought it's just fun. Also, too, it's the thing too. It's just a fun film. It's not really high stakes per se, and it's just a blast.
Mm.
There's just a lot of clever little dry jokes in it that I love too. So
Yeah.
yeah, number 6 is Thor Ragnarok for me.
Okay.